Hi, I'm Sky Sports scholar and Irish Paralympic swimmer Ellen Keane, and today I am hosting a panel discussion in aid of a charity that is very close to my heart. The charity is the Irish Wheelchair Association, and it's had to regrettably cancel its annual street collection because of the COVID pandemic. Now, the organisation's annual fundraiser, supported by countless local volunteers, usually takes place in towns across Ireland and funds essential services for people with disabilities, such as wheelchair accessible buses, sports clubs for children with disabilities, and its local centres. They've had to launch a new appeal called Without You, We're Stuck, which highlights that without public support, vital services for local people with physical disabilities would not be possible. And due to COVID, the charity has had the additional blow of having to cancel local fundraising events around its centres, alongside its biggest street collection, and is concerned that the impact this will have on funds it relies on. So the Irish Wheelchair Association is appealing to people to make a donation by visiting their website at iwa.ie. Now, for today's panel discussion, I am joined by two retired Paralympic athletes who, like myself, have relied on the services of the Irish Wheelchair Association, and I think, like me, they began their sporting career like myself, due to the Irish Wheelchair Association. So I'd like to welcome retired Paralympians John Fulham and Orla Barry.
Hi, thanks very much.
Hi guys.
Thanks, Ellen.
So of course we're here today to talk about the importance of the Irish Wheelchair Association and the importance of the funding and the fundraisers and where those funds go. So John, I'd like to start with you. What impact has the IWA had on your life?
Oh, I think it's a profound impact, really, Ellen. I suppose I came to sport when I was 14, so I started using Irish Wheelchair Association way back then. I'm 49 now, so I'm around a while, and it was sport and learning how to drive were the two services at the time that I used Irish Wheelchair Association for. But that mightn't sound much, but in terms of the impact that had on me growing up, they were the two things that, and the driving obviously enabled independence, but the sport, for me, number one, it was about being able to be active, to be involved with the people around me, particularly in school. Whereas with the PE, I felt quite excluded because the school really didn't know how to include me. And then after that, and I got involved, and maybe it's the same situation for you, but once I got involved, the sport really enabled me to grow in self-confidence and self-belief, and allowed me to be able to play a part in an equivalent way as with my peers. So, and that in terms of someone who's 14, growing up, going out into the world, that being able to do that is of huge impact, and I really can't downplay or underestimate the positive influence that had in my life.
And before you joined sport at 14, were you aware of the Irish Wheelchair Association and the services that they provided?
I wasn't really. At that age, you're probably not out there looking as a 14-year-old, and my parents weren't really aware of it because the association, though, does so much. But it was really through a local person in an IWA club that saw me pushing along the street and came up and asked me, have you ever thought about getting involved in sport? And sure, I didn't. I suppose I didn't realize there was a mechanism for me to do it. At that stage, I thought sport for me would be watching it. So to discover this whole world where I could actually do things, and it was amazing. So that's how I found out about them. And it was only as I became more involved that I discovered there were other things. My journey with IWA, I suppose, which is still ongoing. It started, and the breadth of what they do. And it's very much about providing, in my opinion, and the supports that people need that are relevant to them. So that's how I found out about them. And then after that, the world became more and more my oyster.
And Orla, how did you get involved in the IWA?
So I would have started sport around the age of 9, and I'm 31 now. So again, that was a bit ago. And I suppose we didn't really know what was out there for me and what I could get involved in. So I just wanted to try a few different things, see what did I like. And I had been a good swimmer as a child. I had gone for swimming lessons. And,
that's how we met.
Sorry?
That's how we met.
Yes, exactly.
Those years ago.
Yeah. So I suppose that's where I started then, was tried out the swimming, went to a few different IWA competitions, and from there then they said, well, why don't you try athletics? Why don't you try basketball? You know, there's all these sports that are out there for kids with disabilities to try, and went along to all of them and fell in love with athletics. So I continued the swimming and the athletics for a while together, and then I just focused on my athletics then from the age of about maybe 15 onwards. Totally fell in love with the sport and all the people that were in it, and I was listening to other athletes talking about warm weather training and competing abroad, and like this was their life, you know, it was what they were dedicating their lives to, and I was just so taken away with the possibility that it could be my life too. So the support that IWA gave me at those beginning stages, particularly when I was a junior and going to junior competitions and gaining the experience and the training and the coaching and all the volunteers that put work into me at the beginning, like I definitely owe my career to, you know, starting off with IWA and the support that they gave me. So, you know, without that, I possibly wouldn't have ended up being a Paralympic athlete.
And do you think that before you knew of the IWA, did you ever think that sport was a possibility for you? Or do you think that it's fully because of the Irish Wheelchair Association and all the opportunities they give young people with disabilities? Do you think it's because of them that sport was on your horizon?
Yeah, absolutely. Like if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to try out different things, you know, and you never know if you like something until you try it, or you never know how good you are at something until you try it. So they're giving you the opportunity to try absolutely everything. And even since I was a child, there is even more opportunities now and more sports for them to try. And I know, because I'm from Cork, I know of the Rebel Wheelers in Cork and what they do for kids with disabilities and the opportunities that they give is absolutely fantastic, and they're affiliated with the Irish Wheelchair Association. So there's all clubs around the country, so I would definitely urge any parent or adult or child or whoever is listening to go out there and see what is out there for you to try and see, do you like it?
I think it's also worth noting that the organisation's name is the Irish Wheelchair Association, but they don't just deal with people whose disabilities require them to use a wheelchair. So I'm an arm amputee. I was from birth and I'm a member of the Irish Wheelchair Association. Orla, you're a double leg amputee, so you do use prosthetics, but you also sometimes have a wheelchair. And John, you're in your wheelchair full time. So what other types of disability people with disabilities, like what other types of disabilities can you see amongst all the sporting activities in the IWA?
I'd say, without being flippant, you could see everything and anything. The IWA really caters for people with physical differences. It's not as you say, it's not just wheelchair users. In any case, they're not really interested in what your impairment is. It's once they can accommodate you, they do. So you could see people who are born with a disability, such as myself, in the sense of using a chair. You could see someone who may have lost a limb, who may have acquired their disability through life, whether it be an accident. There are people who come to our competitions that have vision impairments, people who are impacted by other illnesses, somebody who was an amputee due to burns and other complications. So there's a whole plethora of disabilities and abilities, to be quite honest with you, that would participate in it. So Irish Wheelchair Association is really interested in about supporting the people, and I think Orla's point about the community there is really important, because there are so many people within IWA who help you and push you along and encourage you. And that's very important. But it also provides support to families and I would say my community, my parents, the people around me, and the people around everybody. So there's a huge camaraderie there, which I think is something that, and it's very important for children with disabilities, I feel, to be able to compete amongst their peers and to be able to take part amongst their peers. And I'm not saying that in terms of segregating, like, by all means, be involved in your able-bodied club, whether it be athletics or swimming, but also to be able to compete with people in your business, because you learn from those around you as well. So I think there's a whole community element to what Irish Wheelchair Association does.
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the most special things about the Irish Wheelchair Association is the community. And I know disability isn't something that, like, you might be one amongst 30 people in your class, maybe in school, and you might be the only person with a disability. And then when you're in an environment like the Irish Wheelchair Association, you're not one out of 30. You're just amongst people who are your peers. And I think it's important to kind of grow up and interact with people with disabilities to know that you're not alone. Do you think that had an impact maybe on your life, Orla?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking the same thing as John was talking there. Like, as you said yourself, when you're in school as a young child and, you could be one of 30 and you are the only one with the disability, and you think that you're different, and the words you might use is, there's something wrong with me, and that's a very negative way of thinking, and we need to change that way of thinking. And then, you do end up going to a group in IWA, and you realise, actually, there's nothing wrong with me. We might all have, a physical impairment, but there's nothing wrong with me, and it's great to be able to see how other people adapt as well, and hear about other people's disabilities. And John spoke about learning how to drive there earlier, and when I learned how to drive, again, it was the people that I know through IWA that I asked, well, how do I go about doing it? I need to have a specially adapted car, but where do I go to do it? These things aren't advertised widely for you to know where to go. So, I was asking the athletes who were a couple of years older than me, how do you get the car adapted? Where do you go for lessons? How do you do your test? And, they're life skills that we need to learn, and we need to have people who've gone through these life skills ahead of us to ask, how do we do it? And it's just, giving us an opportunity to meet people who are in similar situations to ourselves and to be able to learn from them.
Yeah, I learned to drive in the IWA, and I don't know how I would have driven without their support. I think the IWA is also one of those places that I feel like when you're a person with a disability, you're always kind of afraid to ask for help in certain situations, and you don't want to ask for help because it might be seen as a little bit of weakness, whereas the IWA is kind of a safe place you can go to ask for help in any situation, and there's just so many services that you might even be aware that are there to support you.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I think that the point about the role model that Orla makes is key. And you two are role models now to the next generation of people coming up. So I think it's, I have my role models, you had yours, but now you are those role models. And it's very important to be able to see that, to not to underestimate yourself, to actually believe in yourself.
Is that why you decided to take on a role in the IWA, John?
It is actually, Ellen. Yeah, it was. I suppose I worked for AIB for 25 years, and I just decided at the time it was time for me to look at something different and look at something new, and a position came up within the IWA that it just felt for me it was a right fit, and I felt it great to be involved in something that I'm passionate about, and that possibly that I've got something to give and bring back. So really that was the space that I wanted to move into. So I was delighted that IWA had an opportunity for me to move in there, and I jumped at it. And
since you're in the IWA, are you aware of kind of maybe the worry they're having about not being able to host fundraising events? How important is it to try and get people to donate online?
Oh, am I aware of it? I'm acutely aware of it, because there's just so, like, sport is one of a number of services that Irish Wheelchair Association provides. We've got 2,500 staff, so we're one of the country's larger employers. But those services include going out into people's homes every day, helping them in whatever they say they need assistance with, whether it be getting up, getting dressed, whatever it is. We operate a fleet of 120 accessible buses that people use to get from A to B, to medical appointments, to social appointments, but also to come into our 57 centres around the country. And they're community hubs where people will come in. And for a lot of our members, it might be the only time in the week that they'll get out, and then that they'll possibly get to mix with their own peers. We always say with IWA, you might not need us now, but you might need us in 30 years' time. So there's a whole range of services that unfortunately that we have to fund and we have to provide. And the impact of COVID is, look, it's impacted everybody, but the impact on us has been very real in terms of services had to be suspended and adapted. But we have to continue to fund them, and we have to raise our funds, and we haven't been able to do it. So COVID has had a real impact on us. So that's why, the cancellation of being able to go out there on the streets meant we've had to come up with something different, and that's where we're stuck. We need your help came from.
Yeah, and I think it's worth kind of noting for the general public that disability can affect any of us at any point in our life. So at any point in our life, someone that we love might need to access the Irish Wheelchair Association. But also with COVID, we've all experienced lockdown, we've all experienced restrictions. But I think we seem to forget that people with disabilities, this is how they live. Like, we're restricted so much because of inaccessible buses or inaccessible schools, or just the general thought of just being overlooked. And an organisation like the IWA makes sure that we're not being overlooked. I have a quote here from Sarah Joyce, who is the head of fundraising from the IWA. So she says that we rely entirely on the generosity of the public to fund our wheelchair accessible buses, which are a lifeline for connecting people who cannot access public transport to our services. Our children's sports clubs, driving schools, and many other social supports are also supported through local fundraising efforts. How are the IWA trying to push this Without You We're Stuck campaign?
I suppose it's because we're not out on the streets now. It's very much it's online. So we're using our online videos and telling the stories of the services that our members use and how they use them and what's important to them, and to demonstrate how that we're stuck without being able to raise those funds. So it's primarily about trying to engage the audiences through social media, using our videos and our messaging. And that's really the environment we're all working in now. It's just to try and get that up and running and mobilised, and to get traction and to get people listening to us.
Yeah, I think the wording of it is very powerful. The word stuck is very relatable to a lot of people now. How has COVID kind of affected your lives? Have you felt a bit more stuck than the average person because you're people with disabilities? Maybe Orla? Yeah. So I suppose for me, well, it was a funny year for me anyway, because I retired in January, and I was fully expecting to get involved in like a coaching role this year, and develop myself as a coach, and to help out and to give back to the organisation, in particular like the athletic section of IWA Sport. And like, we couldn't run anything this year. We've had no training, we've had no competitions, and we do have to be very mindful, that people are cocooning and some people may have underlying conditions. So, it is difficult to run an event. So, it was an isolating summer. A lot of people were on their own, very lonely on their own.
and it can depend on where you live and your circumstances as to whether you can get out and even just go for a walk or go for a push in your chair. And I suppose we just have to mind our own well-being now for the next couple of months, if that's the way that our winter is going to go as well.
Yeah.
And like it was a difficult couple of weeks, and I suppose using the word stuck, is right. We did feel stuck, and now it's having a knock-on effect to fundraising and the likes. And
it's important, as soon as the country gets up and running again, without these funds, if the funds aren't there, people with disabilities are going to continue to feel stuck because competitions or events or things aren't going to be able to organise because there isn't the funds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, once we are allowed to get back up and running again, and once it is safe for us to meet and to run events again, the fundraising and the money needs to be there to be able to organise it and to be able to run it. So yeah, it is important that we can run some kind of a fundraising campaign, and what's being run at the moment now, I think hopefully will be successful.
And Orla, are you involved in athletics coaching? Is that what you've turned to now that you're retired? On a volunteer basis, I was hoping to get involved with coaching, in particular the younger athletes coming up, because I feel I started on the bottom rung of the ladder and I worked my way up, and if it wasn't for the volunteers and the support that I got from IWA at the bottom, I wouldn't have made my way to the top. So I want to give back now at that level and meet young new athletes who want to get involved, and the athletes that are already involved, try and help them as much as I can with any coaching or training tips that I have learned down through the years, just to be able to give back. All the experience that Orla Barry has. Imagine being coached by a Paralympic medalist. That'd be class.
Yeah, well, I'll have to develop myself as a coach now, but I'm also working as a teacher, so I suppose they kind of have crossovers between coaching and teaching, so hopefully I'll make a good coach as well.
Do you think it's important for maybe people with disabilities who might be in the spotlight due to their sporting background to kind of speak up now and kind of give back? Do you think that's an important thing for us to do?
Yeah, it is, because I think we need to keep disability and disability sports out there for people to see it, and to just be more aware of it and to normalise it as well. And I suppose the more athletes, come forward and show how hard they train and how elite their sport is and how tough it is, I think the more people will understand the life of a Paralympic athlete.
Yeah, and it also kind of gives parents maybe who have a child with a disability, it gives them something to aim towards, to show them what is possible, because that's where it begins. It begins in organisations like the IWA.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it does. And I suppose, again, it's just realising what is out there, what are the opportunities, and even watching the likes of the Netflix documentary on Paralympics that they made, and seeing what it is like to be at a Paralympic Games. I think that comes across really well, and to just show them that this is something that is possible for kids with disabilities, that this could be what they aspire to.
Yeah. John, how important is this campaign in terms of educating kind of the general public, society, on disabilities, and kind of making people think twice about people with disabilities?
I think it's very important, Ellen, because I think a lot of people just go through life and understandably take the things that they have for granted. Where there are a lot of people out there who are reliant on the work that Irish Wheelchair Association does, and I always think we're one of the country's undiscovered treasures, because people aren't aware of the breadth of the work that we do. But it's necessary. There are a lot of people who would be isolated and who would be on their own without our support. And I think it's for us, and it feeds back into what Orla was saying there. We need to gather our champions to help go out there and tell the story of the need. The reality is, without the funding, our services, we will be stuck. Our services will not return. And this, as you say, I was just talking to my basketball team during the week. So now that's what I do to keep the belly away. But I think the children have suffered immensely, because while the activity in the able-bodied population might have gone up during COVID with exercising outdoors and stuff to get some fresh air, actually it's had an adverse impact on people with disabilities. The opportunities haven't been out there for them. They haven't been able to access the equipment nor the facilities for it. So it's actually had a detrimental effect, and I know that the children in our basketball club have suffered immensely. They need to see each other. They need to engage like kids do. That's what kids do, and they have suffered. They need to be back. But all our services need to continue. And the reality is, without the funding, we won't be able to get back to where we are. So there really is a need. We are stuck, and it's important that the population truly understand that need. And
it's worth noting again that all the funds do come from fundraising. So Sarah Joyce, head of fundraising, also said that their 57 community centres were turned into outreach services within hours of lockdown being announced, and the assisted living team, which provides home support, continued its essential work in people's homes with an emergency team of courageous frontline workers ready to work in full PPE with people who have to isolate. And that's just incredible commitment from these volunteers when their kind of future isn't guaranteed in terms of funding.
Absolutely, there's volunteers, but there's staff there as well.
Yeah,
and we had to adapt because we couldn't obviously do what we did. So our personnel have been amazing in terms of adjusting and going out, and it's an outreach service now. They call to people, whether it be Zoom, our buses are out there in person doing the messages for the people that otherwise can't do it. And the feedback from a lot of our members is that without IWA, that IWA is the one organisation that has come out to them and reached out to them, whereas other people have not. So I think it's a testament to the work of the people and the culture within the organisation that we're there, we meet the needs of what people want, and that's so important. So we have to keep that going. The message is we must keep it going, and we need people's support to do that.
Need people's support, and it's just even helps grow people's independence, and that's a basic human right that anyone should have, is to have independence, and that's what the IWA provides people with disabilities.
And it's how to living your life on your terms, and we're there to support whatever that is.
And that's a great thing to do. On a final note, the Irish Wheelchair Association has had to regrettably cancel its annual street collection because of the COVID pandemic. So the charity is appealing to the public to continue its support to the appeal online and to make a donation through the website iwa.ie. Your guests today were Orla Barry and John Fulham. Thank you very much for joining me to talk about this great cause.
Thank you, Ellen, and thank you for supporting us. Thank you to Off the Ball as well.